going to end, I'm afraid. Okay. It takes a few moments, and then I can start the. Good. Here.
Danielle, it's Hollywood Hills West.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. So we still have 5 minutes to go, and I've been starting these like right on time, so we
Good.
have a modicum of professionality.
So how do we know if there's media on it?
Well, they show up. We have credentialed all of them. Only the media that's applied for credentials gets in. So there was only one name I didn't recognize on the first one, and that person didn't do anything. So we assume, Haryashka, we know. With some of the others, they've all applied and gotten the number and press packet with information and stuff. And
does it mean they're in the Zoom?
No, I'm sorry. That means we let them in. Now I let Haryaksha in because we know who he is. But most of the time, what's going to happen is when I start this, I'm gonna let, just before I start the recording, I'm going to let the press in. So.
And then are they asking questions in the chat, or are we calling on them?
We'll call on them. I'll actually go over that and say, so when I'll introduce you, you can introduce each speaker in turn. They'll speak, and then we'll take Q&A. Keep in mind, keep it to half hour. It may run a little over, but that's basically it. So then the press can either they can either write a question in the chat or raise hands, and then I'll unmute them. Great. For them to ask the question.
Great.
And follow up. And if it turns out like we've had some have difficulty in with their audio, they can just ask a question in the chat. So this is going out of our Facebook, so don't say anything bad right now. We're just, for those Facebook people who are turning in and saying, what is this? This is going to be in about 3 minutes. It's going to be our official press conference with green office holders. And I'll just say that the last time we did this last year, it was very popular and people would be very surprised. Oh, we have green office holders, and hey, look what we could do in my town. So this has been a popular one. So I'm still going to wait. We only have Hari at the moment. So Cam Gordon is back. And one thing I would like to ask people to do, I see, Dave Achmanowitz and actually all of you, Evelyn and Daniel Mead. If you could name yourself, Cam, I don't see a name on your setup. Cam Gordon.
Well, I see one. It says Cam Gordon, but
okay. Can you rename yourself? Do you know how to rename yourself?
No.
Okay.
Maybe you could rename yourself Dean Zimmerman.
No, thank you.
If you hover over yourself on your face, and then there should be a little blue icon with 3 dots. And if you click on that, you should have the ability to rename yourself.
Oh, I can do it. I think I can do it.
Yeah, I did it, and it still says Cam Gordon. You don't like that name?
Well, you could just add to it.
Yeah,
you can just add to it what your office is.
I'm doing it now.
Okay, everybody who's watching it on Facebook, we're now in a consensus-seeking process about renaming Cam, but we are including him in the process. It's not top-down.
I think Cameron means crooked nose, and Gordon means from the 3-cornered hill. So why don't we just do that?
How do you feel about Bill?
I just did it, so I hope I'm right. I think it was one of those like.
Oh God.
One of those.
You wanted a title on there.
Yeah, your official title.
And Grand Poobah.
Yeah, I don't see any title for Mike Feinstein or.
I can.
Yeah, that's because everybody knows who I am. It's it's just.
He's Mike.
Chief Jokester.
Clearly.
By the way, everybody, I was raised in Minnesota, where Cam is on the city council in Minneapolis, and we go back a long time, so that's why we're so silly.
We don't call ourselves counselors, and it doesn't have 2 L's, but we call ourselves council members. So I'm city council member.
Right.
And it's usually 2 words with a capital M. So I didn't know if you wanted to actually rename myself with my title. I'm very happy with just Cam Gordon, but I can appreciate you guys want to.
Well, so anybody watching this is going to
make the most of that council member status. Go Greens.
Santa Monica, we make council member one word. Wow.
Well, it's tough to know how to deal with all this.
But
A moderator, Feinstein.
you're like
Honorable moderator.
We're not getting press in right now. Okay, it is noon right now. So we have only one press person in. What I'm going to do is start the recording. Anybody who's watching this on Facebook will have gotten to see a really nice, informal, like real reality thing, and that nobody else will get because we're going to edit all this stuff. So I'm going to
real world Green Party.
Right. So Haryaksha, thank you for joining up. I'm going to start this. I'll read the introduction and introduce Mike Feinstein. I want to make sure I've got my notes ready to go. And I'm going to start the recording again. Zoom recording. Okay. So good afternoon and welcome. Thank you for joining us. This is our premier inaugural series of virtual press conferences for the Green Party of the United States 2020 Presidential Nominating Convention. This is an experiment for us and probably for most of you. So before this gets started, I'm going to go over a few points. The press is muted so we can minimize any extra noise. The moderator will start by introducing each speaker in turn, after which they will open the floor for questions or may ask a question of the office holders. This is a little bit of a different format, but we do have a half hour, so answers can be brief, and then we'll open the floor to questions and answers. Press, if you'd like to ask a question, please use the raise hand function or type question in the chat area. Or if you can't do that, just wave your hand and we hope to spot it. If you'll be asked to unmute, you'll get a prompt and then unmute on your end. You'll remain unmuted for your question and follow up. Be aware that if someone runs into a problem with bandwidth, poor connection, you may be dropped either by us or the application itself. Want to remind anyone watching this, more information about the Green Party, the convention, and where you can watch it and other public events can be found if you're media in your press packet and schedule. Otherwise, you can look on gp.org, and if you look at gp.org/live, you'll find our convention being streamed tomorrow. We're streaming on Facebook, YouTube. We'll have live English captioning and simultaneous ASL interpretation. I'll now turn this over to our moderator today, who is himself a former elected official, Mike Feinstein, a co-founder of the Green Party of California and co-chair of the Green Party of the United States, former Green mayor and city council member in Santa Monica, California. Also, since 1994, Feinstein has tracked and maintained a list of Greens running for public office across the United States, a very valuable service. He works as co-administrator of the elections database, gpelections.org, and he's advisor to the Coordinated Campaign Committee. He'll also be presenting, actually, he has done this presentation already. So, but you can learn more about the database by going to our website, and we'll get back to this press conference. I'll turn this over to you now. Mike, over to you.
Great. Good morning, everybody, and welcome. And a lot of times people talk about thinking globally and acting locally. That's what people associate with the Green Party. Well, today we're thinking globally and running locally. People actually taking that philosophy and running for local government. We have 2 school board members, a city council member, and a neighborhood council member who are going to be talking about how they're bringing green ideas into the governing process. Our first 2 speakers are school board members. Evelyn Pridemore is the vice president of the Redford School Board in Michigan. And Dave Achmanovitz is the school director at the Quakertown Community School District in Pennsylvania. Evelyn, we're going to start with you. And I just want to, on behalf of everybody here, welcome you to the Green Party. Apparently, you're relatively new Green as well. So why are you in the Green Party, and how does your Green thinking apply to education policy?
So I'm in the Green Party because I'm frustrated with the status quo of the 2 big parties out there. And I have a 20-something son who challenged me to start thinking about our future and the abolishment of a 2-party system. And he just really said, Mom, if people like you don't step up, then it'll never happen. And so I started thinking about the future of my children and my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren and what I wanted for them. And it just started to really line up with where we are as Greens, as women, as parents, where we are in this country right now. And so I went away from what I had been my entire adult life and became a Green.
Well, welcome. And on the school board, you've been on your school board for a long time now. How are you bringing in those kind of values? How do they apply in the education system in your community?
I think the biggest value that we bring that applies to education is diversity and equity, especially in a district like mine that is very socioeconomically challenged, and about 85% free and reduced lunch. There's no equity in education in those situations a lot of times. And we've become very diverse. Our district has changed a lot just in my time on the board, as far as our composition of race and diversity. So I think the fact that I have such a passion for, and our party has such a passion for bringing more inclusion, guides my decision making as a board member. And for me, if it doesn't fall in line with what's best for every student in the district, then it gets a no vote.
Great, thank you. Dave Akmanovitz from the Quakertown Community School District in Pennsylvania. Welcome, Dave.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Why did you become a Green, and how does your Green thinking apply to education policy?
So why did I become a Green? All the way back in '99. I mean, I remember back in high school researching the political parties and realizing, Clinton and Bush were, candidates back then, if I'm dating myself for some of you, or not so much for others. But I realized neither one of those candidates represented my interest, even in high school. And I was introduced to Ralph Nader. And Ralph Nader was this independent guy with this Green Party that, as a teenager, you've never heard of. Start doing my own independent research, and pretty much at the days before the internet was really mainstream. And you could find out, a little bit of information here and there. And I realized that I could register in Pennsylvania as a Green. And so I did straight away, because the Green Party, from all the research I could do, definitely reflected my values. And so I've been a long time Green now for over 20 years.
So you're in office, voters have trusted you. How do Green values apply in education policy?
That's a fantastic question. And I actually think that I bring my Green impact with me to every meeting. With respect to the 4 pillars, promoting democracy by encouraging our administration to continue to use parental feedback, polling, parental-led work groups, community on our decision-making, community feedback on our decision-making as much as possible. As the directly affected community members, their feedback is definitely the most meaningful. Promoting a sustainable and environmentally friendly options where applicable is a very responsible thing for us to do as anybody. But as a Green, I can serve my community by making sure that they get the resources to replace all the light bulbs with LED lights, and make sure that we provide our geothermal systems with routine maintenance, for example, keeping costs down and fossil fuel emissions low. I can promote social justice and social welfare because all of that is within my power. I'm happy to say we are the first district on the board. This is the first district in over 40 years to pass a 0% tax increase in our district. And as a community that's really high in the poverty level, we need to be aware of the needs of the many. And the needs of the many in our district are the struggles of the low-income family. Many students do not count on, many students do count on schools as their primary source of nutrition, education, social development, extended family, or it's possibly their safe space. I'm also involved in those daily decisions. And finally, inclusive communities serve the many, which benefits everyone. Actions like my resolution for the MLK Day of Service or moving for single color graduation robes are all also within my power as a school board member, and it's impactful on a large scale.
Great, thank you so much. So over US Green history, people say, oh, what do you do in between running for president? Well, the reality is we've run thousands of people for local office. And since Greens first started running in the United States, we've won over 1,200 offices, 1,200 races in the country. And most of the highest ones, we've had a couple people elected to state legislatures, but most of them where we've had the kind of the highest level have been city council and county supervisor races. And Cam Gordon is a several term Green city council member from Minneapolis, who I have the good fortune of knowing because I was raised in Minnesota. Cam, the city of Minneapolis is really known for some very progressive things. You were, I think, the first city to outlaw single family zoning in order to promote more housing. You have elections by ranked choice voting, also something that's very progressive. But this summer, your city council has taken an even more immense step in the response to the killing of George Floyd. Can you talk a little bit about that and your role in that process and your thinking of where it's going to go?
Sure. We certainly are in a critical time in the city of Minneapolis, and we've been devastated by the police murder of George Floyd. And that news did spread throughout the world, and also from the protests and the riots that followed. And I think in the scheme of things, a lot of the work in the past has set us up to make a pivotal decision here. Certainly, we've had other police killings, and it has raised concerns in the city. We've had other instances of misconduct. And I would say ever since Greens started getting elected in Minneapolis, those values have been seeping more and more into the government. We had our first Green elected in 1997, happened to be a dual party endorsement then, but then we've had just Greens elected on the city council since then, and the park board. And there have been discussions about alternatives to policing, police accountability, all along that pathway. In fact, we've been able to build up a Department of Violence Prevention in that process, which fits right in with the green value of nonviolence. So I think that helped and has helped us as we've been pushing to look at racial equity in the city. We happen to have some of the worst disparities, racial disparities in the city across the board. And there's, of course, been a national awakening in the 2000s with books like The New Jim Crow and others, and the mass incarceration that's going on. And so it's pivotal. I think we've been able to pivot from this tragedy, and we're still very much up against the wall. I would say when I first got elected in 2006, law and order was still the campaign call of most people, and we need more officers on the street. And that's been a pretty steady drumbeat, but it's really started changing recently. And in the last two budget debates, although the police department got budget boosts, there were people coming in and they were saying, you need to invest in more long-term solutions. We need to invest in prevention. It isn't working over policing our communities. We are a tale of two cities here, where people will give you a very different interpretation of how they view the police, depending on what race they are, what part of the city that they live in. And it's really helped for us to listen to one another, especially the white folks in the city, to listen to the Black folks in the city and hear about what they're feeling as they're driving down West Broadway and they see a police car pull up behind them, well, how their heart rate is responding, what they're getting ready for, compared to white person who's driving on France Avenue in Linden Hills, if you know the city. But that's how different it is. And just hearing from one another, everybody wants people not to be afraid of the police and not to be hurt and not to be killed. So that's significant, and we're getting somewhere. We are right now looking at having a kind of a year-long discussion about what to do, but we're also pushing a charter change. We have a very restrictive charter when it came to the police department. In fact, we're set up as mostly a strong council city, and all the departments except the police department report to the city council, but the police department reports only to the mayor, who has complete authority over it. There's also a strange provision in our charter that was put in 1961 in a campaign led by the Police Federation to require a minimum number of officers, which happened to be 150 more than they had then, and a budget allocation that the council couldn't mess with, that's set in the charter. So we're trying to change that, and we're actually trying to create a larger, or the proposal is to create a larger department called the Community Safety and Violence Prevention Department. And under that, there could be a division of law enforcement, and the council would have policy oversight of that department. unlike it is now. So we're pushing forward with that kind of change, and we're getting a lot of pressure and interest from across the country, from Greens and others to make that. And there's an opportunity for us to hopefully lead, but we're going to need all the help we can get.
Just a quick follow-up, Cam. Defund the police. That's become a saying around the country. And you and your other colleagues on the city council, you gave direction to your staff to begin this process of re-envisioning public safety. That's the easy part. Are you really going to not have a police department? I mean, for the average person on the street, when they hear about this, in a year, when it comes back to you, or a couple months later, what's going to happen? What's the result?
That's a good question, and there's a variety of opinions around that. If this charter change actually takes place, it won't be called a police department anymore, but that's an easy thing we could do. In fact, I was reminded of Bill Clinton, as you recall. He ended welfare as you know it, and we sort of ended up with welfare with a new name. So I don't know where we're going to go. And there's incredible angst and fear in the city right now about what we would do without any law enforcement. And quite honestly, there's actually legal things that you need a licensed peace officer. That's what they're called in the state of Minnesota. And anybody who can be a police officer has to have that license and pass those exams. There are certain things that only they can do. Most people recognize we are going to need somebody who could legally take a gun that gets turned in. And that has to be a peace officer. If you or I had somebody hand us a gun, we need to find a peace officer to get it to quickly if we wanted to do that in a safe and legal way. Same thing with intervening in domestic violence disputes or entering some buildings when you might need to when there's a mental health crisis. The social worker can't actually break down that door legally, but somebody with the proper training and license could. So or think about other terrible things. Think about a kidnapping and somebody who needs to be rescued. You'd want some highly trained professional people probably there to help. Now there's options. We could contract it out, and we've seen Camden that kind of punted off to the county for their—
Camden, New Jersey.
Yes, and we've also seen many smaller cities in Minnesota who got rid of their police departments in the last 10 years, and they usually just turn it over to the county and somebody else does those kind of work when it's needed to be done in their localities. So we're having that big debate now. I think there are some people who can reimagine building up community level safety to such degrees that you wouldn't need that intervention very much. A lot of people can imagine maybe we don't need the police doing so many directed patrols. What if that was somebody else, like an outreach worker or an ambassador who could help people in there in trouble, give them directions, and then call for more help if they needed an ambulance or a fire truck. Same thing with first responders and 911 calls. Right now in the city, it's almost a race, whoever can get there first. The ambulance might not come if it's not coded in properly, but a lot of times if it's a medical emergency, even the fire, the ambulance, and the police are all dashing there. Well, we're looking at what could we do to have other first responders and have it so that it can be clearer about who goes where, when. So I think we're doing a critical and careful and thoughtful evaluation. And I will just say this, because I know I can talk about this topic a long time, but I want everybody to be reassured that public safety is like the number one reason we're doing any of this. And we want to make sure that we have the best safety for everybody right now and during any transition. And ultimately the goal is we make sure that it's a safer city for all of us when we go forward with whatever tools we're using.
Thank you, Cam. And now we go from office holder who's literally talking about issues of national importance, and that's just how fate had it. You were in that place at the right time, to a very, very local style of government, Danielle Mead, who is the infrastructure chair for the Hollywood Hills West Neighborhood Council in the city of Los Angeles. Welcome, Danielle. You need to hit your unmute. So that was
I will mention too that Perry Red has now joined us.
Oh, Perry's here too. Oh, good. Yeah. Okay, so
and Perry actually also had a question for Cam about the St. Paul Reparations Act, which you can get back to.
We'll take questions after we hear from our speakers. So our next two speakers are actually neighborhood council folk. Danielle Mead in Los Angeles and Perry Red in Washington, D.C. So let's start out with you, Danielle. And what is the neighborhood council? And how does that affect livability issues in a megalopolis like Los Angeles?
Sure. So a neighborhood council is really the most local form of city government in the city of Los Angeles. We are mainly an advisory board, but we advise the city council, city agencies on various zoning, upcoming laws, anything that's really going on at the city level. And then we also act as a conduit for anyone who lives in the city of Los Angeles to help connect them to city services and city agencies. And we hold board meetings and hear from our stakeholders in a very direct local way.
So livability, a lot of people, a lot of cars, housing, affordable housing crisis. How do you deal with that on this advisory level in your neighborhood?
So a lot of it would be having to do with new development. So when we have new developments coming through, looking at making sure there's an affordable component of the housing, weighing in on any sort of city proposals for increasing affordable housing. Also looking at, walkability, making different areas more pedestrian friendly, whether that's wider parkways or green areas or pocket parks. Making sure that we're investing in green energy. So we might be looking to underground our infrastructure, which right now all of our power lines are above ground. So trying to get people to put in solar panels on new developments. So, I mean, it really runs the gamut. But a lot of it is really listening to our stakeholders, seeing what their particular issues are, and then reacting to them and trying to come up with proposals that we can take to city agencies or take to the city council, or even weighing in on state measures that really affect livability of our communities.
Great, thank you. And now to the other coast, Perry Red. Welcome, Perry.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So you're on an advisory neighborhood council in Washington, D.C. What did you hear that sounds similar or different in how neighborhood councils work in D.C., and how are you bringing green ideas into local government?
Well, thank you for asking. And actually, we're on the Advisory Neighborhood Commission. There are over 100 of them. And much like Ms. Mead brought forth, we operate in an advisory capacity, which is somewhat problematic. It makes us first responders of sorts, where we're the liaisons between the residents in our single member district here in Washington, D.C., and members of the D.C. Council and the several agencies that they have purview over. And so for us, green ideals chiefly mean we operate outside the mainstream and we go against the status quo, not because we just for the sake of opposing, but for the sake of the types of policies that make a higher quality of life, including the tax structure, including providing true affordable housing in the district. As a matter of fact, our party was the party that brought forth a living wage when others were scared to touch it. And now a living wage is a part of DC's minimum wage. We were one of the first jurisdictions in the DC metro area to bring forth the $15 an hour minimum wage. And I'm proud to say that our campaign in 2013 was the first campaign to boldly step out there and call for the council to do that.
So are you saying that the presence of the Green Party in local government has expanded the political dialogue?
Oh, without question. And many on the council, they admit to that today. Yet we don't have a voice on our 13-member council. And that's problematic. As a matter of fact, out of the 100 or so commissioners that we have in the district, I am the only Green Party affiliated representative that's been elected. That's problematic. And so I'm hoping that the national party would do more to support us right here in the district, one of the most important jurisdictions in the country, being that we have one of the highest cost of living. We have the 4th highest paid council in the country. That's problematic to me. And we win the war of ideas. That's the bottom line.
Well, speaking of the national party and national issues, the Green Party in DC is called the DC Statehood Party. Why is that? And have Greens been out in front on that issue as well?
Well, that's a story all its own. In 1971, Washington, D.C., at the time predominantly black city, majority black city, did not have the same rights as all other Americans. The same situation exists today. And so in 1971, we moved forward the ideal of autonomy and governing ourselves into what we know as our autonomy. And so we started, Julius Hobson was one of the founders of the DC Statehood Party. In 1999, we joined with the Green Party of DC and became the DC Statehood Green Party. And that's the iteration we exist in today.
Great, thank you. And another interesting example of that around the country is in Massachusetts, where the Massachusetts Green Party and the Massachusetts Rainbow Party ended up coming together and forming the Green Rainbow Party. So we're in the era of COVID-19, and we have two school board members here who are going to have to deal with the real questions of, we have school starting in a few weeks. People are wondering all over the country, should kids go back to school or not? If so, how do they do it safely? Evelyn and Dave, can you talk a little bit about what you're thinking about in your district and how you're trying to handle this really tough issue? Evelyn.
So in our district, we are looking at 3 different choices depending on where we are with our numbers. A fully face-to-face traditional school day, a hybrid of those two, maybe where they go to school 2 days based on their last name, and then the Wednesday is nobody's there, and then Thursday and Friday the second half goes to school, or a fully virtual. We're actually discussing fully virtual for our high school, allowing us to then socially distance our younger students who need more hands-on. Our governor has mandated that 6 through 12 will have to wear a face mask in class all day, every day. She hasn't told us how to pay for that yet. And that's the real problem. Is we all want our kids back in school. We understand that they need that touch with their teachers. That's the best way for many of them to learn. But how do we do it safely in a time where we're looking at fewer dollars per student in the state of Michigan? We're probably going to lose about $800 per student because of the economic crisis. And now we have to implement all of these, safe practices. And how do you do that? Do you eliminate busing? Well, so we're in the end stages of our process of, what our plan is going to be. And we will ultimately have 3 options, and we will allow our parents to decide what is best for them. If they decide that their son or daughter needs to be fully virtual, then we will find a way to support that. When our buildings closed, we understood that a lot of our families don't have access to Chromebooks, and we took district Chromebooks and we handed them out to the families that needed them. And we have distributed food. It started out every other day, and then it went to twice a week, and now through the summer we're doing once a week. We send them enough food for 7 days, and we're going to have to continue to do that because they do depend on us for breakfast and lunch a lot of times. And so I don't know, I wish I had a magic wand and I'm sure every school district in this country probably wishes they had a magic wand. I think we're going to have to think outside of the box and be prepared to go partially virtual and partially face-to-face.
Just a follow-up, and then I want to also ask the same thing of Dave. You mentioned that there's a lot of extra cost, and are your school districts in the state of Michigan organizing with the state legislature to try and find an additional funding source, or is this a zero-sum game and you have to take it from other things that you would spend on in your school district?
Well, I think it's going to be a combination of both. Last week, the governor of Michigan did announce that she has $256 million in funding for us to help with those safety costs. But there are over 500 school districts in the state of Michigan. So $256 million doesn't really go very far. When you think about everything that has to be done, we absolutely need federal funding. We need Washington to step up and help districts pay for these very expensive costs. If we have to go to multiple bus runs because we can only fill our bus a third of the, that there's cost involved in that. And unfortunately, I think we are going to wind up taking money from our general fund, which directly impacts the classroom. If we have to take money from the general fund, which is probably the reality here, that's fewer teachers, that's fewer resources in the classroom, that's fewer books. And so I think we're going to be in a situation where we're using some funding from the state, but we're going to wind up taking money from our general fund.
Wow. Dave Agmanowitz from the Quakertown Community School District in Pennsylvania. Does this sound similar? And how are you dealing with the issues of bringing kids back to school?
So just last night was our school board meeting, and it was, as you can imagine, quite the well-attended meeting as everybody's really interested in what's going on. And our story sounds similar to Evelyn's. So primarily as a school board member, my concern is the safety and well-being of the teachers and staff, the students, and our community. And so, walking into this, we need to realize it's safe or nothing. And so how is the best way to kind of achieve this or the finish line? And, we just discussed that we're going to give everybody the particular specifics of our district is we can have about a 50% capacity, which is about half our kids, based on the size that we have, the way everything breaks down. There are other districts that can keep these size restrictions because they have much larger buildings, but we do not. And so we have this particular specific where some get, some don't. Actually, what we're going to be doing is offering the parents the option first. Everybody's going to get the option. Do you want to go back 5 days? Do you want to go back on a blended schedule, much like Evelyn's district with AB days, or do you want to go completely virtual? Well, we're hoping the first round of voting goes well and 50% of the students need or require the 5-day in-person class. And between online only and the AB blended schedule, we can find a way to incorporate the other 50% of the population so that we can offer everything. And those within our community that need the specifics of the 5-day or desire the specifics of the blended schedule or the online only, everybody can hopefully get what they want out of this. But unfortunately, if the results of the particular polling come back so skewed that in-person school is not going to be possible because too many people want to go 5 days, we're going to have to default to a blended schedule, unfortunately, and then of course online only.
Well, some tough choices, but it's good to have thoughtful people in local government. And Cam, I want to return to you in terms of thinking about how do we get thoughtful people in local government. Minneapolis actually elects people in a different way than a lot of the rest of the country. You use ranked choice voting. What is it, and how did a city as big as Minneapolis is adopt such a new electoral system? And that's for you, Cam. People can't hear Cam. Let's do the unmute. Talk about giving voice to people. We're
Thank you very much.
Giving voice 101. Yeah, Cam.
So it was actually pretty long haul getting ranked choice voting. And it probably started with little things like study groups and conversations and reading books and getting priorities. And it actually started outside of city government. And at the time I was outside of city government. And actually it took an unsuccessful charter change that was spearheaded by the Green Party that we didn't even get enough signatures for, but we got people to show up at events to gather signatures and talk about it that really helped. And then there were Greens on the council when it finally started approaching, and there was actually another ballot initiative that came forward, and there was enormous pressure. And the city council then decided to write their own charter amendment to put it on the ballot. but it really took the community coming forward to ask for it and answer a lot of questions and study it and address concerns. And I'll tell you, it had to become a multi-party effort from the grassroots up. So there had to be advocates in the dominant party here. We are a two-party town. We have the Green Party, which is the minority party, and I get to be the minority leader in our legislative body as the only member. But we also have the DFL, and everybody else seems to run DFL. And so we were able to get a lot of support within that grassroots of that party, which put pressure on the elected officials ultimately till we made that change. But when I first got elected, I became leading the task force on trying to figure out how to do that. And we also had to wrestle with some elections department staff and others that thought this is going to be impossible and we're not going to be able to do it. And it really took Fair Vote Minnesota, which was an organization here, being really the outside arm. And then we had people on the inside who were driving the change.
And Cam, so for the non-Minnesotans, DFL stands for?
Democratic Farmer Labor, sorry. It was a merger of two parties many years ago. The Republicans used to dominate all the elections and the Democrats weren't winning much. Farmer Labor actually was doing better than Democrats back then. And Hubert Humphrey, who you might have heard of, had the great idea of combining those parties. And it kind of took a big blow to the Farmer Labor Party as they kind of got subsumed.
So just follow up, how does ranked choice voting work in Minneapolis City Council elections, and how has it changed how elections are held compared to before, and why should other cities adopt it?
Yeah, in Minneapolis, you get to vote for 3 choices, and you have to rank them first, second, and third. Some places you can do more choices than that. We don't have a primary. We used to have a primary, which was basically just a general runoff. So we eliminated the primary. So people are campaigning all the way to general election. Often everybody would get bumped, or a lot of the candidates would be bumped out in that primary race, and because it would just be the top 2 that would go on. But now everybody goes on the general ballot and they're ranked. And people probably know how the system works. But first, the first choices are counted. And if there isn't a majority winner with the first choices, then they look at what are the last choices and the least votes, and then they reassign those preferences up. So people's second choices then move into their first choice spot. We also do it for the park board, and I will just note that we have 3 at-large park board seats. So that's really a proportional represented system, and you can win that vote with just getting the kind of minority that you need, and then the extra votes are reapportioned out there. That was kind of done on the, I don't know what the right word is, on the lowdown, because it's just those 3 seats. And so the ranked choice voting, which most of them were for single seats, and everybody got that. But now we actually have a proportional system here. So you can win with a minority of votes one of those park board seats if you're running at large.
Well, I want to say thank you to all of our guests. We've run a little bit over time, but there's been so many good ideas. And, you know, as we know from the NBA, sometimes going to overtime is really exciting. So thanks, everyone. And let's turn it back to Holly from our National Media Committee to close.
Well, thank you guys for coming. This is really, really nice. Hariashka, you're asking to unmute, but we are done actually with this press conference. I'm sorry. However, we have to stop it because we're going to have another one that people are going to be in the waiting room. I'm going to leave. What I think I'm going to do is stop the recording and leave Facebook on. So be careful what you say. And so you can just leave and we'll keep this on so that the press and others can come on in about 5 minutes, because there's another one that's going to start up right at 2 Eastern. That'll be a second round of federal candidates. Thank you guys for coming. And this is some great, thank you, Cam. Thank you,
everybody.
Daniel Mead, Dave
tomorrow. Virtually.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Actually, I'll tell you what I do see that, Harry, I do see that the other press person is gone. So what I'm going to do is I am going to close this because it makes it easier for the editors. So I'm going to close this now and we'll be right back on. And you can just call right back in, and Mike and I will be back in here too. So thanks for the rest of you guys. Glad we spotted some great candidates. So thank you and best wishes in your roles, in your tasks.
Thanks, Molly.
Thanks, Holly.
Bye.
Bye.